Hi, this is Jim Malcolm with Humanize Technologies. I'm actually coming to you from Austin, Texas. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about Austin and why we're here in just a minute, but first I wanted to say that Dextra is coming together with a lot of creative minds for this program, and I really appreciate the invitation of being able to answer some questions and try to position Humanize against this virtual reality industry, and more importantly, how that affects the creators who are actually making work that's going to end up in a virtual reality headset. So I hope you learn a lot today. So let's go back to Austin here just for a second. The reason that we are in Austin is because this is where we've based our company, because of this trifecta that's happening here between technology, audio engineering, and filmmaking. And what we have here are companies like Facebook, YouTube, Dell, AMD that have really started to put a foundation here of technology in the area. We ladder on top of that audio engineering. So we have this great opportunity here with the live music festivals that happen and live music venues, that those audio engineers also can apply their expertise towards virtual reality. And the third piece of all of it is filmmaking. We can't underestimate the value that we see from Hollywood, the University of Texas, and independent filmmakers here that are doing an amazing job with the visual arts. So anyway, we bring all of those pieces together to make amazing virtual reality content and back that up with amazing shows like the Austin Film Festival, as well as things like South by Southwest. So that's why we're here in Austin, and we'll take it from here. What is virtual reality to me? Well, first of all, just like any other storytelling, you have to be able to move people into a new environment. So in fact, for the rest of this interview, I'm going to try to move around Austin, give you a little bit of inspiration from the city, and help you kind of maybe get inspired to go create some. Now, that doesn't necessarily answer the question of what VR is. So let's talk specifically about what virtual reality is. Now, depending on how you swing that pendulum, some people define it as computer-generated worlds. Some people say it doesn't matter how it's created, but it has to sit into a VR headset. I'm in the VR headset side. I'm less about what is used to create that content and more about what that content is used for. So let's first talk about big story opportunities. When we think about creating, we may create for a TV screen. We might create for a computer monitor that's sitting on your desk. In fact, we might create for a mobile phone that's in our hand. Or if you're a photographer, you might actually create for imagery that's printed and posted onto a wall. But in virtual reality, you first have to understand that you're making a piece of content for a close field screen. Because really all that a virtual reality headset is a screen that's very, very close to your eye. In fact, technically, there's one screen split into two, or two screens, so you have both a left and a right eye. So when you think about virtual reality, to me, it's anything that is played back very close to your eye. So what does that mean to you as a creator? Well, it's really very simple. Art is in the eye of the beholder. I think a lot of you have heard that, but I think that art is not something that you can buy. It's not something that you watch on TV. It is something that's created. And more importantly, I'll say that art is the process of creating, not the end result, not what you buy and put on the wall. So as a creator, if you think about the process of creating and you tie in and you agree that I have a new medium that I create for, that I'm going to get the right tools that are needed in order to deliver that proper VR experience. That's what makes art art. And that's why as a creator in virtual reality, that's why I love this medium so much. All right, so the question is 3D important, or why is 3D important in VR? Well, first, I'm going to put on my sunglasses only because the sun's coming down in my eyes, not because I'm trying to be Mr. Cool. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. In fact, it is that depth perception that makes virtual reality believable in a headset. And in fact, if you don't have that depth perception in a headset, everything kind of looks flat, and quite frankly, it looks fake. It would be kind of like if I take a poster and wrap it around my head. Okay, fine, I can see a picture all the way around me, but it doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right in the headset. So in order to capture proper 3D in a VR headset, you need to have two different perspectives, a left eye and a right eye difference. And when you take that difference of left and right eye and you play it back in a VR headset, that's how you see 3D. Now, especially like I'm standing in front of this pillar right now, and this is kind of a foreground, and then we've got a background action. And in a VR headset, you'll actually be able to feel that dimension if you shoot in proper 3D. Now, this answers an entirely different question about how to create proper 3D content. Now, there are two basic camera types. One is what's called true stereo, where each of your lenses are in pairs. Now, this is very similar to what's been done in the motion picture industry for many, many years, where you have cameras that are parallel, and they're filmed with this different parallax, left and right eye, and then you can place your subject in the foreground, midground, or background, or back in the film days, we say at screen depth, behind the screen, or in front of the screen. Anyway, in a VR headset, you do need to look around, and with that true stereo field, those lens pairs, left and right eye, you need to actually have 4 of those together, right? So that when you look around in a full 360 degrees, you get stereo in all directions. Now, there's another technique to doing this, which is called computational 3D. Now, computational 3D are all the video cameras or the VR cameras that you see that are round in shape. Now, when it's round in shape, you have a different lens pointing in each direction. And so when you look through the viewfinder, you're actually recreating or faking, lack of a better term, I'm sure I'll get a lot of mail for that one, what is true 3D. And the reason I say faking is because in a spherical camera, where lenses are actually in a circle, you don't actually have parallel lenses. So if I'm looking out of the center of this lens, right, looking straight at the camera, my other lens is actually looking this way. So what I'm doing is I'm actually looking out of the corner of this lens in order to fake this 3D effect. Now, the reason I say fake is because you have the curvature of the lenses, so these are all fisheye lenses that are used in these cameras, you have a different distortion, right? So when you're looking at the middle of one lens, I'm going to have distortion at the top and the bottom, but symmetry all the way down. But when I'm looking out of this lens, I actually am looking at the entire curved end. And so I need to de-warp that differently in order to try to marry it with this other field of view. Now, there are multiple techniques. I'm just a believer in having parallel paths, left and right eye. I think that gives the greatest stereo. Yes, admittedly, there are going to be 4 points, so you're going to have to really pay attention to your stitch lines, but it's also, I think, the most effective way to tell a story. 360 cameras that are round in nature, computational 3D, you have a different issue with stitch lines and a different challenge in trying to maintain your 3D content all the way through that field of view. All right, so the short answer is yes, 360 degree 3D is important in VR. The long-winded answer, I kind of took you through all of the challenges that we have when we start to create this content. It is a hot day in Austin, but nothing's better than to take a break. If you do come to Austin, or when you come to Austin, do not avoid the food trucks. It is a food truck culture out here. Taking a quick break at Sosa. We're down at 503 East Cesar Chavez Boulevard. And let me tell you, the food here is absolutely amazing. This is not about getting cheap truck food. This is about getting a gourmet meal from a truck, and incredibly good. Come on down when you're down this way. But anyway, let's go back to the question, which was, why is 360 degree imaging so popular today? And so let's start. This is just an example of a 360 degree camera. You'll notice that it has 2 lenses, one that faces in both directions. And quite frankly, with the push of a button, you can very easily capture your pictures or your video and stream it directly to your mobile device. It's incredibly easy to use. Now, 360 degree does have its benefit. A couple things. One, we don't really have to stitch it so much because, you know what, the lenses are so close together and it's 360. You can immediately create content that goes to your mobile phone. But its limitation is, if you're going to choose a limitation, is that it's really intended to be played back on a screen at arm's length. Now, what I mean by that is once I create my content, I can then push that content up to my TV set, my computer, my mobile phone at arm's length, and I can simply use my finger and I can drag around and I can experience that photo. That's very different than actually playing back in a VR headset. If we're going to play back in a VR headset, we do need both a separate left and right eye. And it's that separate left and right eye that's going to give you 3D. A 360 camera, like that gives you just 2 points of view, or 2 lenses, one in each direction, does not give you that 3D effect. So again, this is a technology, it's incredibly available, it's very easy to get your hands on, and it's something that you're going to create content for, that you're going to push up to YouTube, Facebook, Vimeo, and others to be viewed at arm's length. Again, your computer screen, your mobile phone at arm's length, or even your TV set. Crossing the chasm and being able to start to create for that near field screen really isn't as complicated as you think. So depending on the camera you're using, what you really need to do is move from what is a 360 field of view into a stereo field of view. Now this particular camera, it's really simple to do with just a push of a button. You'll see that we've transformed the camera into a proper VR camera. Now, when I say proper VR camera, what I'm actually referring to is that separate left and right eye field of view. In fact, if I hold it up to my eyes, you can see separate left and right field of views. Very much like a VR headset, when you look into it, has got a separate left and right eye field of view. Right? So basically what we're doing with this type of technology is being able to reproduce what the human eye sees in a VR headset. Now, if you're a filmmaker and you're creating in VR 180, there's a huge advantage, especially as you're just starting to get into the category, or for lack of a better term, crossing that chasm. The frame that's created with a 180 camera is very common to filmmakers to the frame that they're using today. Right? So today you may have your frame set and you're just doing a single field of view. Here, I know that my 180 degrees in this direction is really where all of my film is, right? So this allows me to be able to tell my story, to lead my, my viewer in a certain direction, or limit their field of view. And hey, if you're the practical side of things, you can have your film crew, your craft cart, your audio guys, all of that can be in the back behind while you're shooting in VR 180. Now, VR 180 is something that's relatively new to the industry, a format that's really been adopted by YouTube and Google, as well as Facebook, I'm sure, is going to keep getting into that category. If you go into an Oculus Go, which is what this product is right now, you can actually download, or as part of their app, I guess, is something called Oculus Venues. And what Oculus Venues is basically a theater where you sit in and you can watch 180 VR without having to spin around in a full 360-degree circle. It basically mimics going to a movie theater with proper 3D. And what I like about what Facebook is doing is they've added in a layer of social as well. So you can actually enjoy a VR experience and talk to other people who are also watching that experience. So products like this that are allowing you to capture both 360-degree as well as 180-degree VR video is really the future of how storytellers are going to get into this category of virtual reality, or lack of a better term, cross the chasm. So that's how you get started into VR. When we then start to do 360-degree video, now we have to deal with lens pairs. Now remember, we talked earlier about having 4 true VR fields. Well, here's an example of a VR camera that actually does that. This is actually a product from Humanize. It's called the Views camera. Neither here nor there. I think what we need to understand is the principle. So what this has is a series of 4 proper VR fields. And if you look around the camera, there's a total of 8 separate lenses, right? So all 8 of those lenses combine to make a VR experience. We use these 2 lenses if I'm looking at this 90-degree field of view. I use these 2 lenses if I'm looking at this 90-degree field of view, and so on around the camera. So the advantage to this type of a technology is I have 4 proper stereo fields. There is one area I got to pay attention to, which is the diagonal, right? So this is where any stitch line would be, that I want to make sure from a creator's point of view that I'm managing. And if you manage your stitch lines up front, then fully immersive VR video is extremely easy to make and extremely impactful in a VR headset. Now, I say manage your stitch lines properly, it just comes down to camera placement and good creative technique. So don't think that you can just set down a VR camera and just by magic it creates VR content. You do have to think about where you put the camera. You do want to make sure you have a flat horizon, right? Because think about this for a minute. If I shoot with the camera at a little bit of an angle, it would be kind of like me having my head at an angle. Then if I correct for that in a VR headset, I'm going to correct my horizon, but my parallax is going to be off. So it's going to make my 3D look silly from the very beginning. So make sure your camera's correctly balanced, make sure that you're managing your stitch lines, and either use a mobile app or a wireless connection or whatever it is to actually start and stop recording. And what this type of a camera does is it syncs all of the cameras together, something called gen locking, right? So that all of your frames are synced up, so that both your left eye and right eye match, sync that up with the audio, and then you output using a computer program. Now, the reason you use a computer program versus this little camera that we talked about earlier is that this type of a camera is actually creating two 4K videos in parallel. In other words, there's a 4K full motion video for your left eye and a second for your right eye. Now back to them being spatially offset. So when you put this data into a computer, you're actually taking the data from 8 lenses, creating two 4K videos in parallel. And that's how you're going to get this amazing image quality. Not to get too technical down the road, but a product like this will create up to a 3840 by 3840 image with a single record. Now, you go, wait a minute, 3840 by 3840, that's a square format. You're correct, but that's 3840 by 1920 for your left eye and 3840 by 1920 for your right eye. Again, not to get too technical on all of this stuff, but it's that type of a file format that's going to give you the best image quality when you go ahead and play it back. Case in point, we had a camera like this that went up to the International Space Station. So something about having a very small, compact camera is that you can put it in locations that you otherwise wouldn't be able to put a 360 3D camera, which tend to, in a lot of cases, be a little bit larger. So the Views camera is actually sent up via NASA to the International Space Station and was used to create a VR experience for National Geographic that you can view online. So again, the point is that a proper 360-degree 3D VR field does require cameras pointed in all directions. It does require them all to be synced and gen locked, and then be able to use computer software to create that final file that goes out to VR video. Live broadcasting in VR, is that really a thing? Well, let me tell you, it is 100% a real thing. And products like the Oculus Go and some of these other standalone headsets are making it easier and easier for viewers to be able to capture or to be able to view proper stereo VR video in a headset. Now, what's great about a camera, similar to this rig that I have here, is that if you connect it via a standard USB cable to a computer, now in order to do full resolution 4K per eye VR video, you do still need a computer in between. And the reason being is that there's just so much data. But basically what this type of a system does is when you connect the camera to the computer via USB, there's an application that's open on your desktop that allows you to choose where you want to stream to. So if I want to stream to YouTube or Facebook, into any custom RTMP server. Now, by doing that, you can go up to your own designated server like a Wowza server. You can do things like merge multiple streams. Or if you don't need to get that complicated and you just want a live broadcast, you can push that out to, again, YouTube or Facebook or to any other multi-cloud distribution service. Now, here's the advantage if you are a creator to doing things in live. So number one is, okay, fine, I can show my audience in real time in a VR headset what's going on. But then again, part two is, how do you really monetize VR? And so I personally am a believer in live broadcast that is not something that can be replayed after the event. In other words, if I'm going to live stream a concert, a comedian, a comedy act, magician, whatever it is, I want to invite people in, ultimately for a fee, have them enjoy that for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour and a half, whatever that timeline is. And then at the end of that event, it's basically, for the lack of a better term, no longer available, or it's deleted, or it's gone. So that does a couple things. One is it gets people to get back to the idea of appointment viewing. Second of all, it means that if I don't show up, then I'm going to miss it. So you know what? I paid the money. I want to go in and see this. I'm curious. I want to discover it. So again, it comes down to creative opinions. It also comes down to business models. But if you get to a point where you're live streaming your client's brand out, whether that's music or a location-based something, or it doesn't really matter, you're going to get a brand following in a VR headset, which again is something that you're going to be able to build on and monetize over time. So I'm a huge fan of live broadcast in VR. Now, I've given you a very complicated process here. It's not that complicated. In the scope of things, it's a lot of work to have a camera system and a computer and a broadband network to push that all up to the cloud. So maybe it sounded a little negative by saying it's complicated, but it does take work. And if you have the capability to put the work in, the return is absolutely worth it, and it is significant. However, products like this that we talked about earlier on that have both 360-degree as well as VR video, this type of an architecture can actually be streamed using your mobile device. And so what makes this really appealing to the mass audience is if I just want to stream in 360, right? So anybody with a mobile phone, right? So there's billions of these devices in the market, or combine that with your computers and your TVs at home, you can then go in and start to enjoy a live experience in 360. If you do want to live stream into a VR headset, well, again, this particular product is as easy as a single push of the button. And now I'm going to live stream 4K VR video with left and right eye separation, so that when you play that back in your headset, you're going to be able to take advantage of that in real time. And again, the magic to this is I can do that in a mobile environment using my mobile phone, a little camera like this, and pushing the data up into the cloud. So yes, I believe that VR video is incredibly important to live stream, and we are trying to support that across the spectrum, right? All the way down to very simple 360-degree video, VR video 180 in streaming in a mobile environment, as well as a full 4K per eye VR video solution that fully immerses your viewer into that experience. So where are tomorrow's creators going to come from? Well, they're going to come from learning institutions around the world. I don't care if it's from a middle school to a high school to colleges, universities, post-grad, really doesn't matter. Those learning institutions today that are starting to teach the principles of virtual reality and visual communication in a VR headset are going to become the leaders in the future of the technology. So these kids today that are going to leave school and become tomorrow's workers are the ones that are going to have that competitive edge to help transform those organizations into new visual communication opportunities. So we back a program called VR Horizons. VR Horizons is an innovative way to put cameras and technology in the hands of both students and faculty alike. And probably equally important to that is also giving guidance on how to help build the curriculum so that when those students graduate from those schools and universities, they have the skills and the tools necessary to go into the workforce and to define the future of visual innovation in corporations. And as more corporations continue to adopt virtual reality content, we'll see more and more innovation happening in this segment. I'd like to thank Dextra for the opportunity to share a little bit of what's happening here in Austin, talk a little bit about virtual reality video and how we bring that to life. Hopefully you learned a little bit along the way. Again, having an organization that really caters towards the creators out there, to make amazing work with the tools that we have into the industry is an incredible asset to us as a manufacturer. So I'd like to thank the organization and certainly thank all of you for all of your time. If you'd like to learn more about Humanize, the easiest way to get us is to go to views.camera, so www.views.camera. Or I like to stay in touch with the creative community myself, so don't ever hesitate to just send me an email. You can reach me at jim@humanize.com. Again, I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you for having me.